Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a situation that is, honestly, of historic proportions. Right now, across Europe, specifically hitting France and Spain, there's a wildfire crisis unfolding that is literally reshaping the landscape and upending hundreds of thousands of lives. The sheer speed and scale of these blazes, absolutely unprecedented. We've got a lot of crucial ground to cover today. We'll look at the tactical situation on the front lines, the massive international response, and even some totally unexpected ripple effects on major global events. Let's jump right into the data and see exactly what we're dealing with here. 360,000. I really want you to let that number sink in for a second. That's the staggering number of people who've been forced from their homes or ordered to shelter in place across France and Spain as of Sunday, July 27, 2026. Now, initially, authorities reported around 325,000 displaced, but as these fires just continued to rage out of control, that number quickly surged. I mean, try to imagine an entire major city's worth of people being abruptly uprooted by fire. It's wild. So the crucial point right now is understanding exactly where the brunt of this displacement is happening. When you break it down, the vast majority of those impacted are actually in France, with a massive 250,000 evacuees. Spain accounts for another 75,000 direct evacuations. And, we can't forget the additional 30,000 folks across these regions who've been ordered to shelter in place. That basically means they are trapped indoors, just waiting for conditions to safely allow them to leave, or hoping the threat passes. The heavy burden on France right now is immediate and, frankly, overwhelming. Let's move forward and put this into an extraordinary historical context. Part 1. France's historic evacuations as the Gironde region burns. So, zooming in on southwestern France, the Gironde region is the absolute epicenter of this whole crisis. In just one single night between Saturday and Sunday, 55,000 people were evacuated in the pitch dark. Imagine the logistical nightmare of moving that many people safely with a massive wall of fire approaching. To put this into perspective, with 42,000 hectares of land already burned in Gironde alone, authorities are currently executing the largest peacetime evacuation in France since the end of World War II back in 1945. This isn't just your standard seasonal fire, right? It's a generational emergency. Down in Bordeaux, Mayor Thomas Cazeneuve is actively having to prepare the city to welcome displaced residents who have absolutely zero backup housing solutions. Entire communities are relying on this emergency infrastructure just to have a safe place to sleep tonight. Moving into Part 2, Spain declares national emergency. Across the border, the situation demands our attention just as urgently. Spain has officially declared a national emergency. In fact, Emergency Management Chief Carlos Novillo was incredibly blunt about it, stating that the wildfire near Madrid is at its absolute peak and is entirely beyond the capacity of local firefighters to contain. And look, when emergency chiefs openly admit a fire is completely beyond their capacity, you know for sure the situation is dire. To see why, just look at the scale of destruction here. Nearly 45,000 hectares have been scorched, recently in just the Avila and Madrid regions alone, forcing 90,000 people to flee. But if you zoom out, a staggering 130,000 hectares have burned across all of Spain so far this year. These regional fires are feeding into a rapidly growing nationwide catastrophe. Let's take a closer look at the actual ground tactics near Madrid. Hundreds of firefighters are currently battling this terrifying scenario they're calling the 15-kilometer strip. Basically, two massive wildfires west of Madrid are touching at certain points along a 14 to 15-kilometer strip near the town of San Martín de Valdeiglesias. The absolute top priority for these crews is preventing these two separate blazes from completely merging. Because if they merge, they create what's known as a megafire. And a megafire actually generates its own weather systems, becoming exponentially harder to fight. No pressure, right? Because of this incredibly severe risk, Spain has dramatically reorganized its response. The Military Emergency Unit, led by Lieutenant General Francisco Javier Marcos Izquierdo, has actually taken unified single command of both of these merging Madrid blazes to streamline their tactical response. But here's the thing, their resources are stretched incredibly thin. While Madrid is burning, completely separate fire fronts are raging along the coast in the eastern Castellón province. Over there, firefighters are battling erratic winds that make containment operations, well, basically a firefighter's worst nightmare. Which brings us to Part 3, the Unified European Response. With local firefighters completely overwhelmed and resources stretched to the absolute breaking point, this whole thing has escalated into a massive, coordinated international mobilization. This is no longer just a local or even a national issue. In France alone, since the blazes first broke out on Tuesday, they have deployed 1,500 military personnel, 1,700 security forces, and 1,400 firefighters across the country. I think this really highlights a crucial reality of modern firefighting. It is not just about fire trucks anymore. It requires intense military logistics, security forces to manage massive civilian evacuations, and heavy-duty infrastructure just to support the front lines. And, that support extends way up into the sky, too. Both countries are relying heavily on aerial support right now. Over in France, military planes are actively dropping flame retardants. And EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen confirmed that the European Union dispatched 5 additional aircraft and 2 helicopters to jump in and assist. Meanwhile, over in Spain, the EU Civil Protection Mechanism was activated, which brought in 2 highly specialized Greek CL-415 firefighting aircraft. These planes flew all the way in and deployed directly to the Burgajondo area, which is about 115 kilometers west of Madrid, just to fight those critical blazes. It's a brilliant illustration of how European nations pool their specialized assets the second a crisis overwhelms a single country. Now, the ripple effects of a crisis this huge touch basically every aspect of society, sometimes in ways you really wouldn't expect. Take a look at this sequence of events regarding Sunday's Tour de France finale over in Paris. Organizers were actually forced to dramatically shorten the iconic final stage from 133 kilometers down to just 89 kilometers. And you might be wondering, why? Well, because the security forces originally assigned to safely manage the world's most famous cycling race literally had to be pulled and rapidly redeployed to assist with the fire operations. When major global sporting events are being altered just to free up manpower for disaster relief, that really hits the nail on the head regarding the absolute severity of the moment. Which brings us to a really sobering warning from Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. Reflecting on the 130,000 hectares already lost in his country this year alone, he warned of, quote, complex times ahead. This isn't just about putting out the current fires anymore. It is an acknowledgement that the conditions enabling these blazes are kind of becoming our new normal. Managing these events is going to require permanent structural shifts in how nations prepare, fund, and actually execute their emergency responses. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final critical question to mull over. With 360,000 people displaced, major sporting events completely disrupted, and historic peacetime evacuations taking place, what does this unprecedented weekend actually mean for the future of European summers? Are we just prepared for an era where military intervention and multinational resource sharing become, an annual requirement just to survive the season? Thank you so much for walking through this crucial data with me today. Stay safe, stay informed, and we will see you in the next explainer.